In this video, I will demonstrate how to use the free graphing tool Desmos. It's a web-based graphing calculator and it's great for demonstrations. It's a good resource for your students, but it's not recommended as a replacement for their graphing calculator. Before we get started, on their homepage, they provide staff pics of math examples, creative art, recently saved graphs, and they want to know, as an instructor, how are you using Desmos? They want you to post on Twitter and tell them how you're using Desmos. So let's get started. We will begin by clicking on the pinkish, rosish Start Graphing button. We are now looking at the graphing calculator. But before we start, let's create an account. That way we can save any of the graphs that we create. To do so, you will click on the green Create an Account button in the upper right-hand corner. You may create an account from scratch or log in via your Google account. I will log in with my Google account. And as you can see, it took me right in. The first time I did this, I did have to enter my login information for Google. So let's start graphing. I'm just going to give a basic introduction for this tool. On the left is where you'll enter your equations, and on the right is where you'll get the results or get to see your graphs. You can see above the graph by your name, you have the option to print your graph. You can share it. They provide you a link. You can email it, embed it, or share the image. There is a help icon. There is a wrench for graph settings, and then you have the option to zoom in and out. When you select the wrench icon, you can put it in projector mode so it's easier for your students to see. By going into projector mode, it creates a bolder view of your graph. So if you're doing this in a seated course and you're going through the projector in the classroom, by going ahead and putting this in projector mode and making it bolder, those in the back of the room might be able to see it a little better. If you're an online instructor, you will be doing a Blackboard Collaborate session. You'll be sharing your desktop, so they will be able to see what you're graphing on your screen, on your desktop. I still recommend to go ahead and do projector mode because it makes everything just a little bit bolder and thicker. And again, you can manually click the zoom in and zoom out buttons, or you can take your mouse and just scroll. And since we've messed with the zoom in, zoom out, there is a home button to go back and put it in the default mode as far as zooming is concerned. You can use your left mouse button to click and hold down, and you can drag your graph around. So those are a few of the little options. For those, I kind of mentioned Blackboard Collaborate. If you don't know how to do a Collaborate session, send me an email and I'll be glad to walk you through it. If you click on the three menu lines in the upper left-hand corner, you can start a new graph. This is our current graph right here. It's untitled and unsaved, and that's where you can save it. And in this section would be all the graphs that I have created and saved. And then they give you examples from slope to trig, conic sections to transformation, statistics, calculus. They have quite a few examples. Also at the bottom is a keyboard. You can manually type in things and use your own keyboard, but if you use the one they provide, you have absolute value, you have, your greater than, less than, pi, square root, exponents. Then you've got a functions button, which allows you to do trig functions, stat functions, and then there's a miscellaneous area of functions. So they have a nice keyboard for you to use. So let's get started. Let's try a graph. I'm going to use the basic linear equation y equals mx plus b. And as you can see, they put a little exclamation saying that there's too many variables. Define, your intercept, define your slope. So we're going to add a slider. I'm going to do a slider for everything. And as you can see, if I move the y-intercept, if I change the number on the y-intercept, you can see how the line moves around the y-axis. You can move your slope. If you didn't want to do the slider, you can actually go in and manually change your slope and y-intercept, and then you can see how the line looks. You can have multiple graphs occurring at once. To do that, if we don't want to use the 3 lines and save the graph and then start a new blank one, let's say we do want multiple graphs over here. I'm going to go ahead and remove the slide. Well, no, I'll leave the sliders. You can either go to the plus button and add an expression, or if your cursor's in the box, you can just hit the enter key to make a new item. So let's work on y equals 4x minus 3. Okay, now you can see we have 2 equations, we have 2 graphs, and they're color coordinated. If you were to select the little gear button, you can then select the color. You can say, okay, I want a solid line or I want a broken line. And then you could go through and change the color of that line. So like I said, you can have multiple graphs going at once. Now, I'm going to get rid of my first equation because I want to work a little bit and show you a couple of things with this equation right here. Let's duplicate the equation. With this little gear, you can convert that to a table, you can duplicate it, or you can delete it. So let's first duplicate our equation. So we've got the equation, and then down here, I'm going to convert this to a table. So now I've got the equation, and it's given me some points, and they've plotted the points for me. If I want to make sure to see everything from 2 to negative 2, I will zoom out so that I can see the negative 2, negative 11. I'll zoom out a little bit more. You can zoom back in so you can see everything. And there's the 2, 5. So there's all your points. Okay, I'm going to go back to my default zoom. Now, let's say we want to do a little bit of restriction. We've got this equation here, but let's say we only want part of the linear equation. We can add domain and range restrictions to this linear equation. So let's say we want this line, we only want to see part of the line where x is between a negative 3 and a positive 3. So what you'll do is up here, you'll put your cursor. I'm going to hit space. You're going to hold the shift key down and use your curly brackets. Now, if you're just using your keyboard, you could just do greater than, less than. But if you want that whole equal to, you're going to have to use the keyboard that they have. And what you're going to do is you're going to do negative 3. You're going to do your greater than or equal to, and you're going to put x, and then you're going to do that again, and you're going to do a positive 3. And we're going to hold the shift down and close our brackets. And it didn't. Let me try that again. So y equals, what was it? 4x minus 3, 4x minus 3, and we'll do shift brackets. Let's do -3. I'm just going to do x, and I'm going to do that again and do 3 and hit my bracket. Okay, so there is just part of that line. So y equals 4x minus 3, but we only want to see the line where x is between a positive and -3. So let's do another graph. Like I said, you can keep it. You can delete this and do another. I'm just going to hit the enter button. And let's go to functions. And we're going to go to trig, and let's do a sine function. And we want x plus 3. Okay, so there in purple is our sine our graph for the sine of x plus 3. Now, we can shade this graph, but we'd have to use our inequality sign. You don't always have to use y equals. It's always kind of a good habit to be in, but you don't always have to do that. So for shading above or below, you'll use your inequality symbol. So let's say we want to shade above. So we'll change that to a greater than. And so everything above that line is shaded. I know I just barely touched on a few basics with Desmos. There are quite a few things you can do with this tool, but I hope you found this to be a great tool for your students. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact OTC online at otc.edu. Thank you.